Welcome everyone to Change It Up, Breathing New Life into an Old Job webinar. I'm Elizabeth Wallencheck. I'm the presenter, and I'm one of the Associate Directors for Coaching at Career and Leadership for MBA and Alumni. We are the department at Kenan-Flagler that is here to help all of our MBA students and all of our alumni, even if they're not MBA alumni, with their career and leadership needs. So don't hesitate to take advantage of us. That is exactly why we're here. That's why we exist. And I'll have some links for you at the end of this presentation, some of the key online resources that you can use to kind of connect with us. But welcome to this session, whether you're watching this live as it's being presented or you're seeing this later as a video. This is kind of an interesting topic that I don't see addressed very often, frankly, even within career coaching circles, so to speak. We're often talking to people about making a career change or finding a new job or staying in a job and developing themselves in their leadership skills, for example, or onboarding themselves into a new job or something like this. This session is a little bit of a different focus. I think I originally did this. This might be the second, maybe third time. I think the second time that I've presented this. And I think I originally created this session during the COVID outbreak when people were maybe feeling stressed and maybe feeling like they needed a change in their professional life, but it just didn't seem like a good time to look for work. So what we're going to be talking about is, what if for whatever reason you're really feeling kind of tired of your job, or you've been there, done that, or whatever it is, but you'd like some change in your job, but you really don't want to look for a new job and move to a new company or anything like that. What can you do to actually enrich your professional life and kind of reinvigorate your enthusiasm for the work that you do? So that's kind of the focus for today. So let's go ahead and look at the learning goals. So first, we're going to explore why you may be seeking change, but also why you may want to stay put. It might not be the right time to make a change. And also some strategies to revive your career enthusiasm. And there's kind of two ways to do that. One is to expand your current role. And I don't mean just adding on more duties necessarily. I'm just saying making it like bigger, more important to you, more engaging for you. It might actually be refining your role and tightening it up in a sense. But in any case, how to sort of expand your current role or improve your current role, maybe it should say, but also options to enrich your professional life, even outside of your job and outside of your company, which you may not have thought of. So there's a lot of good ways to do that. So before we go any farther, though, actually, let me go, before we start this next slide, actually, let me give you a brief little, I think I'm on the slide I want to do that on, yeah. Hang on just a second. Let me move this here out of the way so I can see that. Okay, let me give you a little poll. I just want to kind of see where people are at. It's totally anonymous. Let's see, where are my polls here? So I don't know who's answering or who isn't, but there's a lot of reasons why sometimes people feel like they want to change. And so I thought I'd give you this little poll and say, which of these statements do you identify with? And you can choose all that apply. It's not just one answer. I'm so bored, I just need a challenge. Or if I say or do this one more time, I'm about to scream. Or this thing, I just hate this stuff. I hate this part of my job. Or I'd love to learn how to do whatever it is. Or I really wish I could do more of this other thing. Or if I want to advance, I'm going to need more exposure to this. Or this job just isn't strategic enough. I hear that a lot. I know I could contribute more, or I'd like to have more impact. So if I think I believe I activated this poll. Oh, I do see people answering. I'm sorry. Very good. And you can pick more than one. Anything else you want to answer? And I'll show you guys the results in a second here. If you're watching this in a video, unfortunately, the video does not capture the poll. Anybody else want to answer? Okay, so let's see here. I'm going to share the results. And I don't know, this is kind of a long one, so I don't know if I have to, oh wait, oh, there we go, there we go. Can you see the whole poll?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Whoops, there it goes. So you can see a number of you saying, I just need a new challenge, or I'd love to learn something new. I'm thinking about advancing. I need to get some more exposure to something. I'd like my job to be more strategic. I want to contribute more and I want to have more impact. And these are not uncommon things that many professionals feel at some point in their career. So you're not alone with those kinds of feelings. And so these are often the kinds of things that inspire us to say, I think I want something else. So one of the handouts that I gave you or sent ahead is something called the Change It Up checklist. And it has these items on there, and then you actually put a number down for the frequency. Like number 1 would be, I rarely feel this. 2, sometimes I feel this way. And 3 is I frequently feel this way. And then you sort of total them up. And then there's a space for notes. Now, I don't really have a key for this. This is just sort of an informal exercise. So it's not like there's, well, if you have this number, then you better make a change or do something or whatever. You can just look at the number yourself and say, yeah, well, there's a lot here that I really think I do need to change. Or, there's not really that many of these things. There's just a little handful. Maybe I could make a change. You certainly can just because you want to. You don't need a compelling reason to do it. Or you might say, you know what, I'm not going to worry about it too much right now. I guess actually I'm not doing too badly now that I've taken stock of the situation. So anyway, so that's something you can kind of do on your own time. All right, so those are some of the reasons why we might want to change, but there might be some good reasons why we don't want to change at the moment. And that is because we don't live out our careers in a vacuum. We live our careers out in the context of our overall lives. And so there might be a lot of different things going on in our lives that say, I don't really, I don't think this is a good time for me to make a change. So that's what we're going to talk about now. So you can just sort of take stock of them and give them the attention they deserve. Because sometimes when people think about their careers, they feel like, oh, I really, especially if you've gone to a top business school like Kenan-Flagler, I should be pushing forward. I really need to be advancing or doing this or doing that. It's like, well, you know what? There's the whole rest of your life, and there might be reasons why that isn't the time to do it, and that is fine. Because sometimes the reasons in our personal life, or it could be actually in the world, not just in our personal life and not just in our job and our company, but in the world, those could be compelling reasons not to make a change, and they're valid, and we need to respect that and pay attention to that, and that's okay. And so I think the thing is to not blame yourself. If you end up staying put in your job for a few years and then you look back, and don't look back with regret, say, gee, I really should have made a change 3 years ago. Or say, well, what was going on in your life? Maybe there was a reason why you didn't make the change. And that was actually the very right thing to do because those other things had priority at that moment. So what I'm about to share with you are a number of things that often are seen as stressors. So stress is a situation, it's sort of a reaction we have to events when we feel that the demands that are placed upon us exceed the resources, the personal, the social, the psychological, emotional resources that we have to deal with the situation. We feel that as stress, like I'm not really prepared to deal with this thing. This is asking me to do something different, to adjust, to change, and I don't feel like I have the resources to do that. That is stressful. And where this list of things came from actually was a stress scale that was delivered almost 50 years ago in the 1960s by two psychiatrists. And their names were Thomas Holmes and Richard Ray. I'm not sure I'm saying his name properly, actually, but they were studying whether or not stress contributes to illness. In the 1950s, or 60s rather, they didn't know that for sure. Nowadays, it's been pretty well established that stress does lead to illness. Not only does it affect our emotional and mental health, it can actually affect our physical health. So that's what they were sort of looking at. And so that these things are important. But the other thing that came out of this list, which you'll see in a second, is that some of the things that stress us are actually positive changes. So even positive changes are very stressful because, again, they require us to adapt. So don't be surprised. There might be some great things going on in your life, but it still means I'm really not ready to make a job search change here or job change. So first of all, we have personal changes. If you were recently married or you were recently divorced or you're in the middle of a divorce process, maybe you have a new baby or there's a baby on the way. You have family or personal, yourself, health problems. That can be a major stressor. If you have family or marital issues going on, maybe one of your teenagers is really having a really tough time right now. Maybe you've recently moved. Even you wanted to make the move. It's not like you had to move. You wanted to move, but that is a big change in your lives. Or, and of course, if you've had a death in the family, those are all big stressors. Whoops, sorry about that. I'm sorry. My mouse is incredibly sensitive during webinars for some strange reason when I'm in Zoom. Second, financial. Maybe you moved and you have a new house, you've got a new mortgage, you've got a higher mortgage. Maybe you've accumulated more debt than you feel comfortable having. Maybe your spouse or partner is unemployed. Because, when you get a new job, most of the time it works out just fine, but you never know. There's a little bit uncertainty because it's an unknown. And so you go, what if it doesn't work out and my partner's unemployed? I don't want to risk feeling like I can't. What if it's awful and I can't feel like I can't leave? Or what if it doesn't work out and they ask me to leave? Now we're both unemployed. I just don't want to risk it. This isn't the time to do it. Or maybe your spouse or partner has a new job and you just don't want the added stress in the family if you're also adjusting to a new job. Maybe you have unexpected expenses. I know I think it was a year ago in the summer, all of a sudden it's like we had to get a new air conditioner, a new heat exchanger, the car needed major repairs. There was all these things that just came out of nowhere. Maybe you have kids in college, that's a huge expense. There could be just other kinds of stress issues that make us feel like we don't have much bandwidth. Maybe you've been working extremely long hours, or you have really high workload at your current job. Maybe you have a lot of personal obligations of some sort, or maybe just on a grander level, societal change and turmoil. The last several years in the world and in America, there's been a lot of social change and it's been stressful. Some people don't, it doesn't affect them that much. They don't pay that much attention to it. Others of us really affects us. So when this was recorded, we just had a presidential election a couple of weeks ago. And whatever side of the spectrum you're on, whatever your persuasion is politically, it was stressful leading up to it. It's still stressful. There's a lot of contention going on. So that can be difficult. And of course, a few years ago, we had the COVID outbreak, and that was very difficult for a lot of people. And then there could be changes going on in your industry or profession. Maybe there's been rapid change in your industry. Maybe there's been a contraction in the market. Maybe there's been a major disruption that, some of the market's just going off into a whole new direction. And then the rest of the market is contracting because they're just going off in a totally new way. That can cause a lot of uncertainty in the market that you're in or that you're pursuing. And then finally, economic change. So maybe there's just a general market turn down, or maybe not a downturn, I'm sorry, or it's a general market volatility. And that's kind of what we're seeing right now. The economy is what I call choppy. There's parts of it seem to be fine. It's chugging along. There's other parts are being challenged right now. And so it just, depends on what you're looking for, what part of the work world that you're engaged in, what's your industry level and things like that. So the thing is to just consider, make a conscious choice that like, what, this isn't a good time to make a change. I need to sit back a little bit, or actually this is good, or my reasons for change are so compelling that even though there are these stressors, I'm going to go ahead and make a change anyway. So, any reactions or comments to this? Maybe things that you've been thinking about, or maybe in the past that you've been through a period where you wanted to make a change and you just felt like you couldn't? Anybody have anything they feel comfortable sharing? Doesn't have to be now in the past that it really something else was going on that you affected your career and job change plans.
Yeah,
Okay.
Elizabeth,
Go
some of
ahead.
these, some of these resonate with me. I think some on my past experience, and I have not made any big changes in terms of career from company to company. I've made a few, but top of
Sure.
mind for me were culture, right? Um, am I going to what's going to be better off for me in terms of culture, or don't know?
Sure.
How am I going to acclimate? Am I going to be a good fit? Those are some kind of the questions that I've asked in the past when I've made a big
Absolutely.
change. Yes.
Yeah, and those are good questions. And because each one of those, like I think what you're pointing out is like, here's some of the elements of the unknown. And sometimes just the unknown gives us a lack of sense of security. And it's like, if we've got other things like we see on the screen that are making us feel insecure, like, I don't need any more insecurity. When things are more stabilized, either on a grander scale or in our personal lives, we may feel more ready and even eager to make that change. We see it as a good challenge, but it just depends on what else we're balancing. But thank you for sharing that. Anybody else want to share anything? And don't feel obligated to, just want to give you the opportunity. Well, okay, so what you can certainly pipe up with something else in a minute here, but there's another handout I also sent you, and it's called Stability Factors. And that is really the things you're seeing on the screen. And it just asks you to think about, have you experienced these in the last 12 months? And then again, there's a place for notes, like what exactly were they, or maybe how are you feeling about them, or how do you think that affects your career plans, is to really think about that. Because again, we often don't think about it, but even positive changes in our lives are stressful, and we may not want to add to that burden of stress right at the moment. So let's go ahead and move forward. And so before we get any farther, let me say a couple of things. Just because nobody's come to you with ideas of how to grow within your job or change your job or take on more responsibility, or maybe a promotion where you're kind of like in the same role, but you're just going to be at a high level. Just because that hasn't presented itself to you yet, or no one's mentioned anything like that to you, that doesn't mean those opportunities aren't there. They might be there. So don't make any assumptions because they haven't happened that they're not possible. Um, so my first question is, not that you have to answer this, this is just something for you to consider. Does your manager even know about your interest to make a change, to grow, or to learn something new? If you haven't shared that with them, you probably need to do that. We're going to talk about how in a few minutes, because they can't read your mind. They don't know. Now, some companies have a culture, and some managers have a management or leadership style that they proactively think about the people that they supervise and the people they have on their teams, and thinking about how they can grow them and help them advance. And that's wonderful. But not all companies do that, and not all bosses do that. And so, whether you do have a boss that's oriented that way or not, it's really your responsibility to take care of your own career growth and satisfaction. So, even your boss may be more open to it than you realize, but you don't know that, and you don't realize it because you really haven't had that kind of conversation yet. So don't expect them to read your mind. You have to make kind of sometimes initiate and let them know that you are ready for a change, or you'd like to get involved in some new things and things like that. Again, we're going to be talking about this a little bit more as we go forward. So first of all, if we want to make a change in our career, somehow reinvigorate our current job, we need to envision what that change should be. You can't really look for something, and you certainly can't make something happen if you don't know what that something is. You don't know what you want it to turn into. So here are some questions to get you thinking about that. If your job was more engaging again, or even if you think about it, if I were in a new role that I was really thrilled to be in, what would it look like? What would it really be like? In other words, what would you be doing in your job? And what would you not be doing? That's important too. Maybe there's things about your job that's dragging you down because, like, I really hate having responsibility for that. I wish somebody else could do it. If I could just get rid of that, I'd be a lot happier. Or maybe not. Maybe there's nothing like that, but there's other new things you want to do, or more of something you want to do, or whatever it is. But try to get as specific as you can before you consider strategies to turn your ideas into reality. You really want to see, what is it? I need more time with clients. Well, what kind of time with clients? Doing what with the clients, or whatever it might be. Or I want time to work more independently, or I'd like to try out some of my new ideas, or just get as specific as you can, because that's something that you can stay focused on, but also that might be some ideas to bring to your boss. So what we're first going to talk about is how to improve the role you're in, how to make it more engaging and make it more interesting and exciting for you. And this could be expanding the role, or it could be actually refining the role, which you can almost see as that as sort of like making it more concise or more focused, or make feel like it's making it smaller. And I don't mean it's necessarily smaller, less responsibility, but the focus of it is tighter than it was. Or it could be making it broader. So it could go either way. It's really sort of trying to focus on what you really want. So what this is what we're talking about here is finding ways to focus more on your favorite skills, de-emphasize your least favorite skills, maybe build some new skills, or leverage your existing skills in new ways. And maybe part of that leveraging skills in new ways is maybe having the opportunity to utilize underutilized skills. Like, I don't get to do this very much in my job, but I love it. Like, I love to write, but I don't get that much opportunity to write. How could I build that in? So that's how you need to be kind of thinking about it. It's kind of that a classic thing that sometimes people say, what do you want to do more of? What do you want to do less of? And what do you want to do differently? It's kind of along those lines. So first of all, discuss your interests and aspirations with your manager to explore some possibilities. They may have some ideas for you. Maybe they've been thinking about, like, maybe they have kind of sense that you're not as fully engaged as you could be, and they're already having some thoughts about how they could engage you, or maybe there's some new initiatives they're thinking of and they think you might be the right person for that. So they may have some ideas, but again, we don't want to put that burden on them. It's usually easier for people to respond to ideas than to come up with new ones, at least for most of us. So instead of saying, hey, I really am kind of, I feel like real kind of disengaged and I'm just not, I don't just have the enthusiasm. I want to have the enthusiasm. I want to stay here in the company, but I'm just not feeling it anymore, and expect them to come up with something. It's usually better if you give them some ideas to work with, but they may have some ideas on their own as well. One of the things you might want to consider is, what can you delegate? In other words, what can you offload and get off of your plate? Now, I know you might be thinking, well, how do I do that? Like, how do I go to my boss and say, I don't want to do this anymore? They don't usually take kindly to that in some regards, but actually they might if you present it the right way. So there might be some things that really is taking up your time and it's not fully utilizing your best skills. And if you could get rid of that, you could spend more time using your best skills. In other words, the company would be getting more out of you. You'd be able to add more value because you're not using up some of your time on these lower level skills that really somebody else could do. Now, the other thing about that is sometimes the more junior people on the team, instead of feeling like, oh, I feel awkward, like handing this off, like I feel like I'm just being selfish, I don't want to do it, but somebody else is going to have to do it. Well, first of all, somebody on the team may like to do that. They may want to do that thing. And secondly, sometimes when we hand those responsibilities off to someone at a more junior level, you're helping them to grow. You're helping them their professional development. So sometimes, if again, you can think of it from both not only your own, but the company's viewpoint and the team's viewpoint, that might be a very reasonable thing to ask for, and actually a beneficial thing for everybody involved. I may not think of it that way, but it definitely could be. Also, maybe pursue some training or professional development through your company. Maybe they've got programs that they do regularly. You could sign up to take them, or maybe they provide funding to take external training or what have you. So those are some ways to kind of enrich your role and build some new skills. I'd encourage you to start networking internally. Lots of times when we think about networking, we're thinking about it external to our company for job hunting reasons. But we can network internally, including at some senior levels, depending how much you have, how high a level you have access to and what would be appropriate. In a big company, you probably don't have access to the CEO or anything like that. But at some more senior levels, at least, to identify emerging company needs, like not just where they are now, but what are they going to be needing in the next 6 months, 18 months, 3 years, whatever. Are there some skills they're going to be really needing? Like maybe right now your company's really needing people with artificial intelligence skills because not too many people have. So maybe you could sort of, if that's interesting to you, that could not only enrich your work life, but also it can help you sort of stand out because you're going to be one of the few people who have those skills where most of the people on the team do not. So it could be a particular skill, it could be a technology, it could be a new initiative that's coming down the road that senior people are already know about, they're already talking about it. You may not be aware of it, but they are, that you could be preparing for or positioning yourself to get involved in. You could also seek out and volunteer for existing or upcoming projects or committees. Again, there might be some interesting things going on that you're not aware of if it's not like directly in your department, but it is going on, and they do need people to get engaged, and they do want people from different departments. So networking can help you learn about that as well. And going further with that, you might initiate a project or a committee or an initiative that would allow you to better leverage your strongest skills or to even develop new ones. So either way, you could be kind of initiating something new to be happening, which can be great too. So has anybody ever tried these kinds of things? And if so, how did it work for you? Did you run into roadblocks, or you've done these kinds of things before? I know I'm just asking you, you might think, yeah, I don't know, but if you thought about it, you might say, actually, I did do something like that. Anybody have anything like that to share? I'm going to get a drink of water while you're thinking about that.
Yeah, I can attest to the delegation piece for sure. As a leader, Elizabeth, I think you alluded to it. I think it is effective um, to take the approach of delegation in terms of a development opportunity for others, rather than
Right.
truly a deflection of a task or a project. And oftentimes that type of narrative or messaging in terms of a development opportunity has been well received,
Good.
and it also helps with relationship building, to partner to actually help push the task or project along, depending on what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. Thank you. And I think sometimes part of that might be keeping your eyes and ears open to listen to some of the other folks on the team, whether they're a junior member of the team or actually they're a peer. Say, Suzanne seems to be really interested, so good at Z. Maybe she would be better doing this than I would be, and maybe she would love getting the chance to do it actually. And she hasn't thought to speak up to you or the man. If you're her manager or you're both under the same manager, she hasn't had this webinar. She didn't think to speak up about it, but maybe she would love to do that. So it could be really a great win-win, but we don't often think of it that way. Thank you for sharing that. So now, along these lines, what you were just mentioning, Ernest, is getting buy-in from management. And so here's some ways to do that. Uh, Scan the environment for problems that need fixing, brainstorm some solutions and share them with leadership, whether that's your direct supervisor or maybe there's their peers or somebody even a level above them. I mean, you'll know in your own company what's appropriate, who to talk to about this. Probably your direct supervisor should be included in that conversation, but there might be other ones to talk about with it too. But just kind of keeping your eyes and ears open for things that need to be done, a problem that's there. And you need to do the heavy lifting of clarifying the need. Like, what is the problem? And I think a really effective way to present it is to think about what are the consequences if we don't address this? Because often organizations, us as individuals, but also organizations, we're so busy with so many things. Oh yeah, we really should get to that sometime, whatever. And we just don't. Or we just push it out of our awareness. We're not even really fully aware of the problem. But if you think about it, like go down the line, what if we don't address this? What's ultimately going to happen if we keep ignoring this? And what could be the benefits if we do address it? So if you can kind of do that I don't think it's terribly hard work, but I'm going to call it hard work. If you can do that hard work of thinking that through, and that's part of your message to management, that may be much more effective. And what you want to do is, you've probably heard this saying, don't go to your boss with problems, go to them with solutions. Nobody wants to just be handed a whole bunch of problems. So identify the problem, clarify it. Why is it an issue? What are the implications if we don't address it? And here's some ideas of how we could solve it. But make sure it's a balanced message. So you don't want like 80% of the message just to be like complaining and how frustrating this thing is and so forth. Just name it in business terms, get to the point, and then talk about what you think could be some potential solutions. And management may not totally agree with you, that's fine, but it's probably going to move the conversation forward better and faster if you provide solutions. And like I said, people are better at reacting than coming up with the answers. So they can say, well, that's not a bad idea, but I'm not sure about this part. The thing is with managers is they have a different perspective. The higher you go in an organization, it's sort of like climbing a hill if you're out in the country or something like that, or park or whatever. When you climb a hill, you get higher and higher up there, you can see farther. So when you're higher and higher in an organization, you get wind of things that are going on and other implications and other constraints and other possibilities that at your level you may not be able to see. So don't be surprised to say, hey, you know what, we really can't do that. We just don't have the funding this year, or there's some other priorities that senior leadership is focused on. I don't think they're going to be receptive to this right now. But maybe at another time they will be, or maybe the two of you can think of ways to kind of change how you define the solution to make it more interesting and more acceptable to other management. And so, don't be discouraged if they don't take your suggestion, or if they want to amend it. That's actually part of the process. That can be a good thing. It might be actually a better solution. And then also focusing on how your efforts will add value to the department or the company. Whatever it is that you're proposing that you could take on or do or focus on or start that project or committee we were talking about on the other slide, how that could actually benefit the department and the company. And you want to keep the conversation positive. Like I said, don't just let it be a complaint session. Keep it positive and forward focused, not looking back at why it went wrong and how it went wrong and how wrong it is, but name that, but move on to how we can make this better. And again, balance the message. So it's not just your needs, it's the company's needs. So I think, to me, I think a really healthy company is going to want to make people happy. Actually, they're going to be thinking about that. How can we engage people? Can we get them to stay, keep them growing, etc. But the company isn't in business to make you personally happy. Actually, it'd be nice if they were, but they're not. They're there to run a company to make money. And so we need to present it as, don't just do it because I want to get involved in this, but I think it's a much more convincing message if you can also build in how it's going to benefit the company and add value to them. So again, let me take a break here and just say comments or questions, reactions, or experiences you've had with anything like this that you found worked or didn't work, or maybe you learned from a mistake. One time you went to your boss with something and boy, it just didn't work that well. Now you realize what went wrong or whatever.
No, just a question, Elizabeth. I'm curious. It feels like maybe one underlying assumption here is this feels like maybe it's a culture that's very much supportive of development and upward mobility. Your thoughts on how to navigate a culture where maybe the business needs are priority over development?
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of where I was sort of going with that. Is that, and you'll know in your situation. I mean, it's a great question in a way, because in some cases it might be the message is going to be much more towards what the company needs and very little about what you want to do or what would help you grow if you don't think they're like receptive to that. But and it's not, I don't see that as manipulating them, but just to appeal to them in the way that they're going to relate to most. I mean, sometimes when I'm coaching people on some kind of concern they're having with their boss, maybe about why they've been promised a promotion, but it hasn't happened for 2 years or something like that, is think about what's going to appeal to them. Is it the personal appeal? Is it money? Is it I mean, it depends on what the conversation. These may not all fit the example I just gave of wanting a promotion. But I mean, like, people have different motivators. Some want to look good. They're all about their own ego. Some of them are about, making the team successful. Some of them are customer focused. Some are very logical. They don't, the personal feeling part, they just don't relate to it. It has to be very logical and concrete. Other people, it is the people part that really sways them to take action. So I think it's just presenting it to say, they're not really thinking about professional development that much, but if I can show that it's really going to benefit, there's nothing wrong if you come up with a solution. It's going to benefit the team, benefit the company, benefit their customers or whoever it is, but it also works to your favor. It's going to let you learn something new that you want to learn or use skills that you haven't been able to use very much. I don't see anything wrong with that, as long as it's all honest, but you can decide which is the best way to present the message. Does that sort of answer it for you a little bit?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, so let's see, what's our next slide? Now, beyond your job, we're actually almost done, so I think we will come in a little bit early. But we can certainly hang around and talk or whatever too, if we'd like to. So beyond your job, so often when we think about our professional life, it is in the context of our job, which of course that is the bulk of our professional life. What are we doing every day, sort of 9 to 5, so to speak, that we're getting paid for? But there are ways to reinvigorate your professional self outside of your job. And this might work in terms of the question that you just asked of, they're not really that oriented towards professional development. Well, how can I develop myself sort of outside of the job? And so here's some things to think about. Um, Getting active with online resources and social media. So this is like super easy to do. So for example, join relevant groups on LinkedIn. It- if maybe your teammates belong to certain groups in your, usually they're, or the most relevant groups tend to be focused towards a profession or function or an industry or both. And maybe people that you work with know of some good LinkedIn groups to join, or maybe people on your team aren't really that into that stuff. Maybe other people, maybe people you graduated with, or maybe people from your former company or something like that, that maybe they're more into that. And maybe their company even encourages them to be active on LinkedIn, and find out what some of the relevant good groups are. Or you can just search for it on LinkedIn and, search for keywords, whether it's supply chain or whatever it is, you're probably going to find some groups that are oriented towards that. And get involved, respond to people's posts, initiate your own group discussions, um, post articles to LinkedIn. So maybe it's not in the context of a group, but just write something up and post it on LinkedIn. So one of the things this does for you, it gets you just sort of engaged in the subject matter, because I think sometimes when we start feeling burdened by our job and kind of like just not enthusiastic, it feels like drudgery. It's like we're getting too involved in this parts of the job that really aren't the main reason why we got into the job. So for example, like my job is focused on coaching people in the career areas and things like that, and conducting webinars and designing them and delivering them and things like that. But there's always that other stuff. There's the administrative stuff. There's reports or statistics or projects you have to work on, and that kind of stuff. And often that's the stuff that may not really relate that directly to what got us into our career in the first place. And that can be what actually drags us down. But when you get involved in groups like this, they're talking about the subject matter. They're talking about that raw material that makes up your profession, or the key things that are going on in your industry. And so just getting involved in those conversations can be energizing, actually. So just responding online, starting your own discussions or whatever it is, can be fun and engaging. Starting a blog relevant to your profession or industry, that would be a little bit, rather than just posting articles LinkedIn, it'd be sort of an ongoing thing. You probably, if you want to catch attention, you have to keep putting information out there. So if you like to write, or maybe you do videos, if you like to do speaking and sharing your knowledge, that can be a great thing to do. And again, it would be focused on the subject matter. Also become active in professional or trade associations. Now, I know I don't actually hear a lot of, I work almost exclusively with alumni, and I don't hear a lot of alumni talking about their professional or trade associations. In my world, working in higher education, it seems like almost everybody's involved in some kind of professional association. I've been involved in professional associations ever since I got out of graduate school. I've served on boards of divisions of national associations. I served on a board for a statewide association. I was, went from like secretary to president-elect to president to past president. So I was on the board for 4 or 5 years. I've served on committees of national associations. I mean, that's just what you do in this world. Now, every profession is different, but in our world, we do it a lot. But the point of professional and trade associations is to connect members, to advance the profession, to advance the industry, to be learning new things, supporting people, making connections, etc. So it's a great thing to be involved in. And again, a lot of what they do, whether it's conferences, journals, or whatever, is focused on the subject matter. So it can be really nice to just rub elbows with people who do what you do, and share ideas and things like that. So here's some simple ways to do that. Excuse me, volunteer at events or conferences. I think one of the easiest, greatest ways to get to know people quickly in an association is to volunteer at an event and volunteer at the registration table. This is something I've done a number of times, because when you are at the registration table, checking people in and helping them find their name tag and their materials and all that stuff, you're getting to meet everybody. You're seeing all these people and you're seeing their names, and you've got your name tag on and they're seeing your name and what company you're from or whatever it is. It's a really great way to get connected. So that in and of itself isn't going to get you like necessarily energized in your job, because it's not, you're doing a simple task like checking people in, but you're just getting to meet people that maybe you could have later ongoing conversations with. I know for myself, one time I was doing, at the time I was doing like sort of freelance sort of work in either coaching or training and things like that. And I volunteered for a statewide conference, and they had a debriefing session after the conference, like a week later, to say, hey, how did it go? What did you notice? What worked? What didn't work? What should we do next time? And as we all introduced ourselves around the table, there's about 15 people there. There was some woman who was HR director at a local hospital, and she needed some help with a sort of assessing the training needs of their middle managers. And she said, oh, when she heard that what I was doing, she says, oh, we've got to talk. And we ended up talking, and I got a really nice contract gig through that. And it wasn't even that hard. It's not like she interviewed me against other candidates. She was like, she knew I had the kind of credentials and whatever to do it. And I ended up with a nice contract. So you never know where these kind of things can go to. Now, that may not be something you can take on. We're going to talk about side hustles in a minute. That may not be something that you can take on right at the moment, but maybe you can. You never know if it's a short-term thing. Serving on committees, again, can be very helpful. I mean, volunteering at events is sort of like a one-off kind of a thing, but certainly serving on a committee, serving on the board can be a great way to get engaged and actually help set the direction for the organization. Speaking at conferences and meetings, I've spoken at conferences, I've done webinars for associations, and I find like a lot of associations do webinars for their members, and they're often looking for people to do that stuff. They're sometimes scrounging around, scratching their heads. Who could we get to come and speak to our members? And so to approach them and just say, hey, I've got this idea. I don't know if it fits with your programming plans for this year, but here's what I'm thinking about doing. I thought it might be helpful for our members. You might be surprised, especially if you do like to speak or you do like to write. These can be great ways to use those skills, even if you don't get to use them that much on your job. And along the lines of writing articles for an association or writing up white papers for them can be a great activity. And also it's great visibility. So you get to be known in your world, and you sort of develop a reputation or a brand, and that doesn't hurt when it does come time to job search. People already know you, so that can be really great as well. Questions, comments, or again, experiences with any of this? Okay. All right. Now, some more beyond your job. We talked about maybe doing training that your company has available or would sponsor you in doing, but maybe you even take classes or pursue certifications at your own expense. If it's something that you actually don't think you can make a case for, maybe it's a new skill that doesn't relate that directly to your job, but you'd really like to learn it because it's really interesting, or you think it might help steer you in a new direction down the road with your career. Or like you had mentioned earlier that, what if the company isn't really that supportive of professional development? Well, maybe there's some, I know it can be expensive, but maybe there's something that's actually worth pursuing, that additional training even on your own. And sometimes just taking the training is engaging, gets you re-engaged, even if it doesn't change your job, at least not in the short term. Just taking the training is really interesting. Doing some contract or gig work, or starting a side hustle to allow you to build skills, or again, use existing skills in new ways, can be great. Like, I don't get to do this too much. I'd love to be able to do this. Maybe you pick up some side work to get to express that. Volunteering at a nonprofit. for the same reasons, gaining exposure, maybe even to a new function, actually. The beauty of working at a nonprofit and doing volunteer work, if you're not getting paid, usually the bar they set to select someone to do work for them is not set as high, because it's not like, hey, you really have to have the credentials because we're paying you a lot of money and you better have all the right credentials for us. They're a little bit more open. It's like, hey, if you're willing to help us, you don't have to know everything about it, but if you're willing to help, we would welcome your help, because you're doing it for free. So it can be a really nice way to explore new areas and get exposure, maybe serve on a committee, maybe just your general business skills would be helpful to them. And you could get exposed to something like, maybe you're a finance person, but they want to do some marketing. And there is, of course, a financial component to that. And as a finance person, you'd love to be on that and learn a little bit more about marketing or something. You just never know. Mentor people, either through formal programs or informally. If you want to do it informally, just get engaged with where sort of junior members of the profession or in the trade are involved, sometimes through professional associations or trade associations or what have you, that you're likely to rub elbows and sort of informally make connections with people. And you don't have to say, I want to be your mentor, or I'm looking for a mentee. It just kind of happens organically that, you maybe connect with somebody and you sort of hit it off and they have questions and you have some answers or ideas, and it just kind of develops that way. I was active in one of my current professional associations has a formal mentoring program. And so I signed up for a year ago to be a mentor. And, it's just, again, if you like to share your information, you like to teach people and things like that and support people and help them grow, it can be a really nice thing to do. And then lastly, if you're really engaged and you really want to get engaged and you really like to write, write a book. That can be really, really interesting. And of course, now there's all kinds of options for like self-publishing and stuff like that, which I don't even know a great deal about, but it's not like, you publish your own book instead of you have to go to like one of the big publishing houses and get accepted. You can actually publish it yourself and even get it on Amazon and things like that. So if there's something you've been burning to share with somebody, I mean, I just went to a webinar today from one of my professional associations. I was the participant, and it was an author of a book, and they arranged for her to do a webinar for us, and it was very interesting. So again, that's the kind of the fun stuff that you get to do from time to time. So any other ideas people have of maybe things they've thought of? Maybe you haven't even done it, but you've thought about doing to kind of enrich your professional life without changing your job, or things you've wondered about, you have a question about? Okay. All right. So, oh, there's one other handout. I neglected to mention it to you. When you're doing that part of thinking about what, if you were re-engaged in your job, what do you want it to look like? That was several slides ago, so I apologize. But there is another handout that I sent you called Top Three, Bottom Three. It asks you to go back through your work history as far back as you want to go, depending on how much work history you have. In other words, how old you are. You might even go back to your college jobs or even your high school jobs. You don't have to go back that far, but you could. Because even though you've done jobs when you were younger that aren't related to career, you still, if you think about it, you can learn important things about yourself. Like, I really like interfacing with customers, or I hate interfacing with customers, or I really like working with numbers, or I really don't like working with numbers, or whatever it is. So I like a formal work environment. I like a very informal work environment, whatever. But anyway, that's the exercise. And then there's questions. Oh, what it does is, I didn't say what it was yet. You go through back your work history of all the jobs as far back as you want to go. And you think of at least three things you like the most and at least three things you like the least about each job. Some of it should be the work. What were you actually doing? What were your duties, responsibilities, etc.? Then there's some questions at the end to get you thinking about what you put in that top three column, what you put in the bottom three column, and what have you learned about yourself? What does that kind of tell you? Does that give you some ideas of certain kinds of jobs? Are the things you want in your job, are they in your current job? Are they things maybe you could build into your job, that type of thing? So that can be a nice little tool to get you thinking about what you want your job to look like if it were more engaging and more enriching for you. So I neglected to mention that, but that's there too. So what I'm going to do, this is the last slide, and that is just to leave you with this thought to say, you may have heard that statement, be the change you want to see in the world. So I kind of amended this to say, be the change you want to see in your career. Even if you don't feel like you can make like a formal change, like look for a new job or move to a new company, how can you actually change? Kind of is sort of where there's an old saying, say, grow where you are planted, where you happen to be, grow right there, and so that's what I encourage you to think about. And so now is a time we can have some additional questions and answers. But what I'm going to do is move off of this Q&A slide to this slide, which is some of the key career and leadership resources. And I'll leave this on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And I thank you for coming. I thank you for listening if you're watching this, if you're watching it as a video. And I hope that you found it helpful. So, whoops, went a little too far there. Let me turn off the recording. And thanks again for coming.